What up, Muggles? This is Fyrebyrd, and I'm here with Kuwie.
Hello.
You're listening to the Dusty Cauldron, where we talk about all things Harry Potter and the witchy world at large. Kuwie's actually going to take the wheel today and drive the conversation while we talk about whether or not we consider the goblins in Harry Potter to be a caricature of the Jewish people.
Yeah. So we're going to decide together as a family if the goblins are anti-Semitic caricatures or just kind of seem that way, but not really. So first off, I'm going to try and present this with as little bias as possible so we can all draw our own conclusions. There's a strong debate happening right now on whether or not mythical creatures that reside in the Harry Potter universe, known as goblins, are anti-Semitic in nature. Is this a case of trying to find fault in everything that the creator in the Harry Potter universe has done, no matter how benign or innocent? Like, Harry is supposed to be a Nazi because he has a lightning scar on his head, and the SS had lightning bolts on their lapels. I 100% just made that up. I bet there's probably a conspiracy theory out there about that, but not that I know of. Or is it just a case of the creator adding yet another dark mark on her phantasmic creation that we realized years later, long after the spell of whimsy had worn off? So like I said, I'm going to try and let you decide. I will try and be as unbiased as possible, but we'll see if that leaks through or not, and we'll try and decide what my bias is or not. That could be a fun little mini part of the episode.
I'm definitely trying to approach this as like, is there intent behind it or not? But
right.
I'm fully aware that I have a bias against the creator. Like,
I mean, because we know that the creator did make specific allegories within and likenesses within her universe. You know, we've already talked about them before. Death Eaters are allegorical Nazis themselves. And then you've got, Magic Hitler and all that fun stuff. So is this just another layer into that, or was this just an accidental, I guess.
Or does it speak to like a subconscious bias of the person that like they write it in without realizing they're doing it?
Right, and that could be the next level to it as well, like whether she realized it or not, that got thrown in there. All right, so I have a description that I want to throw out there.
Okay.
So this description is usually depicted as having large hook noses and dark beady eyes with drooping eyelids. Now, who could that be describing?
Severus Snape. No, I'm just sorry. Goblins.
Now, contrast that with very long fingers and feet and some pointed beards, pointed nose, and dark slanted eyes.
Goblins. Borderline house elves.
Okay, so the first one is the stereotypical characterization of Ashkenazi Jews, which is the go-to Jew.
Oh, was I supposed to be guessing stuff that's not in the series? I may have misunderstood the assignment.
And the latter one is pulled from the text of the Philosopher's Stone. There's a lot of striking similarities.
Okay.
Though.
Okay.
So the first one that I said was, like I said, the stereotypical characterization of Ashkenazi Jews, which is your go-to Jew when you're going to talk about, like, the Jews.
Yeah.
That's who we're talking about more often than not. And then the other one is the description of goblins pulled from the Philosopher's Stone.
Okay.
So a lot of similarities right off the bat.
Yeah, not great. We're not getting off to a good
We're not
start.
We're not starting strong here. So, what are the stereotypical characterizations of Jews?
Are we talking about physicality or behavioral?
All of the above.
Okay.
So, go ahead. What do you got?
The first thing that pops to mind for me is like miserly or money grubbing. And then the pointed features.
Right.
Those are the two things that jump top of mind for me.
So your biggest stereotypes are going to be large noses, beady eyes, drooping eyelids, thick, coarse hair, red hair.
Interesting.
Which was very interesting to me as well. During the research, I found out that, especially in the Middle Ages, a lot of Jews had red hair because it's a recessive gene, right? And they tend to stay within their own communities.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of interfaith marrying. I English good.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of interfaith marrying in the Middle Ages, right?
Yeah.
So in medieval Europe, your Catholics definitely did not want to mix in with either Jews or Muslims or anything like that.
And I'm sure the other way around.
Right.
As well.
And so Muslims were actually well, at least in the Iberian Peninsula, were fairly tolerant of Jews, but they didn't necessarily like still view them as equals. They were a lot more tolerant than Catholics were. But
shocked.
Yeah, right. But the fact remains is that they still stayed within their own community, and with red hair being a recessive gene, it permeated through. Mm-hmm. You can also see that in some other characterizations like that is the I can't remember the character's name, but in Oliver Twist, the guy that takes in Oliver Twist and is running the gang of thieving children is your stereotype Jew of the time. He's got red hair, he's got a large nose, he's obviously greedy. You know, which we already mentioned is another one. So those are some of the characteristics that we're talking about. Now, obviously, I cannot think
Fagin.
Yeah, or Fagin, however you want to
Maybe,
pronounce it.
Yeah. Google really came through for me on that one. I misspelled every single word and it still knew what I was asking.
Did you mean? Yeah, I did.
Yep, that is what I meant. Good job, Google.
The algorithm
Not
is getting
sponsored.
great. Not sponsored. So, the next question is, where did a lot of these characterizations come from? Right. So, you know, a lot of, I always say this with stereotypes, is that stereotypes are based in fact, right?
At the beginning.
Right. Whether we like to admit it or not, there was enough of one type of people or one group of people that did X or looked Y that enough people saw or realized to make that the stereotype. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody in that group does or looks that way, but enough of them did at one point in time for them to make that connection.
I think there's an important disclaimer, particularly because of the type of character we're talking about right now, of like a mass message changing the meaning. So like I think you could easily just have that maybe several bankers are Jewish, and then that gets bastardized as a message of like they're miserly and money hungry when there's not actually like evidence to prove that.
Right. Well, we're actually going to get into that here in just a little bit, because the next thing that I was going to talk about were where these characterizations come from. Okay. And a lot of them come from 11th and 12th century Europe. So this is a time where, you know, the 11th century, the end of the 11th century, beginning of the 12th century, we have the beginning of the Crusades. And so not only do we have a surge in, as far as Christian Europe is concerned, do we have a surge in pro-Christianity and anti-anything not Christianity. But then we're also going into those historical lands of Muslim and Jews, right? So we're now starting to mix with these people and see them face to face a lot more. So like I said, those stereotypes that are based in fact, you know, especially with some of the physical features, there were enough of them that had larger noses than, say, a Frenchman at the time. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was a 4-foot long schnoz, but we tend to exaggerate, especially when we're remembering, oh, they have a big nose. Oh, big nose means big nose, right? Apparently I'm really hung up on the big nose. But so that's where we get them from. It also deals with pseudoscience that's called physiognomy. I could be mispronouncing that. Now that comes from ancient Greece even. So we're talking about 3rd, 4th century BCE. And that is essentially, the quick capsule version of that is, I can tell who you are as a person by what you look like. So we see that come back in the medieval Europe, and then we see it come back again, medieval Europe through the Renaissance, and then we see it come back in again in Nazi Germany.
I feel like that's prevalent right now.
Right, and like we also see it today as well. Like a good example I can think of is Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, right? He's talking about the wife of Bath. And the wife of Bath had large, wide-set eyes. She had a big gap in her teeth, right? All of that at the time meant that she was very sexually promiscuous. So
Okay.
that's where that, so like we look at you and go, okay, you've got broad shoulders, you must be this type of person. You've got beady eyes, you've got to be this type of person. And like, again, even today, beady eyes means that you're going to be sneaky and distrustworthy, right?
And like pointed features is also that.
Deep set eyes means that you're probably brooding and stupid, right? So that's where we get a lot of it. And I'm sorry, it goes back as far as 5th century BCE. I just looked back at my notes and I misquoted myself.
How dare you?
How dare I? So another example is a pale complexion, a fat body, a clear voice, and a slow gait. And these are all characters of a phlegm, because we're also getting back into the different fluids of the body, right? Because back in medieval Europe, you had bad blood that needed to get out, and that's why you were sick. That's why you had the flu.
Leeches.
So
Okay.
we're gonna get that bad blood out of you with bloodletting. So you had bad blood, good blood, you had phlegm, you had mucus, and these are all located in different parts of the body, right?
And they were using that as a descriptor for people that...
Yep.
Ugh.
So it all had to do with your phlegm, and that all denoted cowardice and sloth. So again, a slow gait, fat body, clear voice, pale complexion. You are slow, and you are a coward.
I don't feel like those ones in particular were applied to the goblins in this. Like, I mean, I guess we don't really ever talk about their speed, but they definitely seem very intelligent, and
Very much
that they're
so,
like
yes.
willing to go to war over money, which doesn't seem cowardly to me. But
No, but that does really tick on to the miserly one.
yes, absolutely.
And the money hungry thing. So
Yeah.
so back to that, actually, that's a good segue, getting back into it. Why do we pick on the Jews? Right? Why historically are the Jews the target? Like, and that is cross century, that is cross culturally, that is cross continent. Why the Jews? Why is Jew bad?
I literally don't know. I have been wondering that question my entire life.
So a lot of it comes from some of these characterizations that we've done, right? Definitely in medieval Europe is when we really start to have that almost hatred start to brew of Jews, and that's because of money. So the Catholic Church outlawed a practice called usury, and basically what that is lending money with interest. So the Catholic Church says, no, that's immoral, that's not right, we're not going to do that anymore. No Catholic, no Christian can do that.
Is everybody listening? Did you hear that properly? It is actually against the Bible to lend money with interest.
Yeah, and you see, I don't know if they recanted that or not. I didn't do my research on that part. Just at one point in time.
Yeah, at my understanding, there is, I could not cite you like verse right now, but there is an actual verse in the Bible that talks about this.
Well, I mean, Jesus
so
did flip some tables of some merchants, so.
It's just funny to me. Like, this is obviously devolving from our main topic today, but like, we will have people that believe that everyone should have to pay off student loans, or that are totally fine with things that happen in the credit markets, that are extremely religious. And I'm like, so how does any of that make sense to you? Because from a religious standpoint, that is terrible and like a big sin.
Right. So the Catholic Church has outlawed this. So that means that no ruler or not, king or peasant, doesn't matter. If you give someone money, I give you $10, I can only get $10 back. You cannot give me $12 just because of it. That's now immoral. So this opened the door for other cultures and other religions to use that practice. And so they started making money. Jews obviously were one of them because they weren't allowed to do a whole lot. They weren't allowed to own or till the land. They weren't allowed in a lot of other professions. So what am I going to do to be able to feed myself and my family? Okay, money lending it is. And so they start making money because interest, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, they are seen as having too much money because, well, I only have this much and now you've got that much, right? And so we have a huge tinge of jealousy that starts to brood. And of course, jealousy will lead to hatred. So that's I would say, like, the major reason of, like, the root cause besides religious differences. And then, of course, you get into some of the other tropes. You know, the Jews killed Christ. You know, it's their fault that he was crucified. Those of us that are not religious and did not read the Bible, the quick capsule version of that is there was the chance to save Jesus. The Roman officer in charge of the execution had two people that he was willing to pardon, and he was only going to pardon one of them. And he gave it to the crowd. Do I pardon Jesus or do I pardon Barabbas? And the crowd chanted, give us Barabbas, give us Barabbas. And so, of course, that was a crowd full of Jews. So that means that they, quote unquote, killed Jesus. So that's the quick, dirty version of it. That's also where we get the saying, I wash my hands of this. Mm-hmm. Because he literally washed his hands while saying that. I can't remember his name. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to what we're talking about. But again, so the whole reason why I'm talking about all of this is to help understand, one, why there's so much anti-Semitism to begin with, what some of those tropes are, and how we connect those to the goblins of the Harry Potter universe. So as we've already started to connect some of the dots, we've got some physical resemblances, and we have some character resemblances. Greed, miserly, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where the greed came from. The greed trope is that they were able to charge interest back in the day, and because of that, they started to build generational wealth as well. And so we see that time and time again. Again, like, obviously, whenever we talk about anti-Semitism, the big one to go to is Nazi Germany, right?
It's a given, yeah.
So we see that a lot in Nazi Germany as well, of, you know, these Jewish business owners and moneylenders are ruling the economy and ruling us by proxy. So we can't have that, right? Mm-hmm. And so it starts off as a jealousy, and then it builds into hatred, and that hatred will excuse the actions that you will then do against them, right? So I got off topic on myself here.
We're really good at doing that.
Yes, I'm fantastic at it. I really am.
While you try to find your spot, I will just tell you that there's like probably 16 different Bible verses that reference it, but the main one that calls out that you cannot do lending with interest is Exodus.
Yeah. Getting out even. That's Old Testament, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very old. And actually, give me a second. I'll give you the exact verse.
All right. Well, while you're looking that up.
Yeah, it's Exodus 22:25. If you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not be like a moneylender to them, and you shall not exact interest from him.
Yeah.
So
right
the Catholic Church was a little bit late on saying usury is bad.
Well, they were a little bit late on a lot of things. So. All right. So another character personality trait, I guess, is a better way of saying it for the anti-Semitic caricature is disloyalty.
Okay. So
they've mainly it's disloyalty to the national identity is what the trope is. It's either a dual loyalty or no loyalty to the national identity. You are a Jew before you're an American.
Okay, that I feel like that's definitely applied, because it's like you are a goblin before you're a part of Wizarding Society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So not only that, but we have a very specific disloyalty example with Griphook.
Yeah.
What's he do in the depths of Gringotts?
Yeah, and like he sort of has like moments of either way, but then at the very, very base of it, he makes the goblin choice. Mm-hmm. But
and so then again, we've got that disloyalty connection as well. That's one more connection that we've got there. Another one is controlling employment. So again, they've got the power, they've got the money. So one of the tropes is that if a Jewish run bank, you got a Jewish owner, only Jews are able to work at that bank. or a Jewish market, only Jews are allowed to work at that market.
Yeah.
So we're controlling employment. So we're controlling who is able to earn money.
Yeah. So is this a point against that then? Because we know that Bill and Fleur work there and they are not goblins?
Right. But what is your goblin job?
Basically anything. Whereas Bill is a curse breaker for them. I actually don't know that it's described what Fleur does for the bank. It's just that like she's taken a job at the bank to get better at her English, which is a very weird premise. But I don't know that we know what work she does, but it could also be menial in the eyes of a goblin.
Right. But what else do goblins do in the world of Harry Potter? What other employment do they have?
I don't know that we've seen them anywhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it's kind of a for and an against.
Okay.
Right. So you can make a case either way of it being anti-Semitic or not. In that caricature, in that characterization, because I can't honestly either think of another employment avenue that goblins have within the Harry Potter universe.
I feel like in that way it's a statement on the wizards and not on the goblins.
Right. And again, you can go either way with that one.
Yeah. But it does still feed into the idea of like a very insular community.
So one of my final points on some similarities that we've got. So we've talked some physical similarities. We've talked some personality trait similarities. The final one is language. So the Jewish language, Yiddish or Hebrew, right? Whichever one you want to go for. The Yiddish, I think, is more slang, and please don't come at me if I'm wrong. But either way, Yiddish or Hebrew, neither are very widely spoken throughout, globe and so on and so forth that way. But to the untrained listener and to a biased and racist listener, it sounds like just mushmouth, right? So,
and we've literally basically called it that in this series because it's gobbledygook.
That was the next question I had, which is, what is the language of the goblins called?
Gibberish.
Gobbledygook, which is an actual word. That is an actual word that has been in use in the English language for quite a long time. If you look it up, Merriam-Webster, it is wordy and generally unintelligible jargon.
Yeah.
So that's, once again, we're not looking good.
Right. Like, so I want to be able to say, particularly at when the series is written, that it's an accident, right? That, like, we've seen this trope so often in different movies and books and other literature that it's just ingrained in us that this is how a person like that looks or acts without connecting it with otherness or Jewishness. And then you look at things where, like, when you get to choose what the language is called and you choose that, it looks intentional.
Right. And like I can excuse physical traits because a lot of how she describes the goblin physically is how we normally would look at a goblin anyways, long before the Harry Potter universe was created.
Yeah.
You look at like Lord of the Rings. We have very pointed features. We have beady eyes, dark eyes, so all of that fun stuff. So like a lot of the similarities are the same. Magic the Gathering has the same. Granted, most of those guys are green toned in skin, but
I think there is currently like a controversy going on actually with goblins and like D&D and whether or not it's racist or anti-Semitic to have them in campaigns. And so it's like it's another universe that's going through this same dialogue right now. And I think it comes down to like, this is a mythical creature that was created by someone at some point. So what was the intent when it was created and how are we using it now?
Right. And then I think to piggyback on that, when it became more popular, whomever that may be. I mean, Tolkien is the godfather of fantasy, right? Of modern high fantasy. So is it on him? He didn't create them. He didn't invent them. So how are they described to him? Did he describe them the way that they were described to him? And so are they inherently a caricature that way? So if that's the case, whether they are or they aren't, they were created before the Harry Potter creator put them into her universe, right?
Yeah, I think
so.
that the first one was in the 14th century.
Okay. Well, we're not looking good then.
Right.
Because once again, when was a lot of our anti-Semitism happening? Starting in the late 11th century through the 16th century, Renaissance times, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, a couple 500 years of ingrained anti-Semitism, and on the tail end of that, now we have this creature created that has some of the same features. Now, again, that could be an accident, because on the top of my head, the Harry Potter universe is the only universe that I can think of off the top of my head where the goblins are very miserly and are more businessy. Goblins elsewhere that I can think of are dumb, are kind of horde-like.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can see miserly because they, you know, go for gold and shiny objects, but it's just because they're shiny, not because the inherent value of them.
Yeah, I think another thing that's kind of a distinction with Harry Potter is that, like, they do have a place in society, whereas in a lot of other stories where you're interacting with goblins, they really don't.
They're
like,
the dregs
they're like
of
a
society.
hive. Yeah, that's outside.
Not even the dregs of society. They're not a part of society.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is literally an animal, a creature.
Yeah.
That is intelligent enough to speak, and that is all of the intelligence that it possesses.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of, like, the goblins even in, like, ESO, and it's like fighting a rock. Like, they're dumb.
Yeah. So, and once again, another universe where we have them. And are they not kind of a stereotypical looking goblin as far as some physical features are concerned? I'd say those are a little taller than most goblins that I can think of.
Yeah. I feel like, unfortunately, though, that's more of a case towards it being a caricature because it deviated so much from what the mythological base was, which she's done that with other characters, right? Because her version of a werewolf is very different than any other literary reference to a werewolf.
Well, and that's another debate, because then we get into in that book, we're talking about what's the difference between a werewolf and a wolfman. Mm-hmm. Which, if we would then watch the movie, that's a wolfman.
Yeah.
Like, we even talk about the difference in the movie.
And it's not what we see.
It's still a friggin' wolfman. Mm-hmm. Ooh. Anyways.
Yeah. I think that's probably a director's choice rather than anything else. But
either director or CGI.
Yeah.
Whatever creative person on that end, but still bad choice. Mm-hmm. So disappointed. So that's the synopsis there on. Well, I English well today.
It's close enough.
Synopsis is not the correct word, but that's what the closest that I'm getting today. So that's what I've got. I hope that my bias didn't poke through on whether they are inherently on whether or not the goblins in Harry Potter are anti-Semitic in nature or not.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that we'll ever know the intent, but...
Well, I'm sure we'll get a tweet about it.
Well, we won't, because we have, like, 2 listeners. But, and it might be us. But I don't think that J.K. Rowling, and I think this is one of the only episodes where I'm going to actually reference her as the author, so I'm breaking my own fourth wall there, but I don't think that there was any intent to do it. Like, I want to believe that, but then I look at the types of beliefs that she holds about other people,
right?
And they're
that's why it's so hard to
that I'm
make that separation.
Yeah. So then I immediately want to say, well, there has to be intent, because you have intent to be hateful about everybody else. And you did other things. Like, you made the only Irish character the one that likes to blow things up. You named your primary Chinese character Cho Chang, which sounds like a racial slur. So that, like, they're not pointing in positive directions.
No, well, and then with with our only Irish character as well as him blowing things up. What's he trying to do his first year? Turn his water into rum.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, was that in the books or was that only in the movies?
You know, it's been so long since I've read the first book, I don't remember. I want to say that it was just in the movie, but even then.
Yeah, and she was a part of it, so she can't.
She was a part of the entire creative process, definitely for the first couple.
And she has the ability to say no
anything.
to things and to say yes to things. But, like, we're counting on a lot of judgment here from a person who called the cursed child canon, so obviously there is no good judgment there.
Well, and again, like I said in the beginning, is it a case of accidental whoopsie? This is just the characterization. Because think of who we're talking about and how they were raised.
Yeah.
And the society and culture that they came from. You know, so, okay, I've got a Chinese character. Cho Chang. Yep, sounds good enough to me. And it was, and at the time that it was written, too. Like, I hate to throw that out there as well, because you've got beautiful works of art that were written in some not great times. Like, look at To Kill a Mockingbird. And the stance that Harper Lee takes on racism there, and how she writes about it, versus Mark Twain.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I also think that we need to consider what literature and media J.K. Rowling consumed prior to writing Harry Potter. Like, I honestly think that you could easily just come to see a goblin-like creature as behaving in this way and never make the connection that it is anti-Semitic.
And then, okay, I need a mythical creature to be my bankers, because we need to start to introduce mythical creatures.
Right?
Okay.
Obviously, it should be a goblin.
What mythical creature is bipedal? It has the ability to speak. All of these other things, you know, but is not human and is maybe subservient in some sort of way. Goblin, sure. Let's roll with that.
She could have maybe tried to take it less human, and maybe we would have moved away from an anti-Semitic reference. Like, maybe if she'd had the goblin or the bank run by dragons. But then I think ultimately we'd end up back in this conversation, like, is a depiction of a dragon anti-Semitic? Yeah.
Because they hoard their wealth.
Yeah.
And kill
Aren't we
anybody
just
that comes
describing,
in.
like, fat white men? Like,
I mean, generational wealth.
we're talking about American fat cats now.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the bank should run by cats.
That are fat.
Now I want to dress Bryce up as a banker. I think that would be funny.
So, with our little mini part of the episode, then, what do you think? What was my bias?
I don't know. I believe that you believe that they're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't believe that you played a heavy hand in how you were describing things. Like,
Good.
you just laid out facts.
Like, I really tried not to, but the facts that are laid out, and I really tried to do, like, the Sherlock approach of, you know, until I have all of the facts, then I will come to a conclusion, because other than that, you're just bias checking.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking
confirmation bias.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. I good English good eye today. So you're just doing confirmation bias. I'm like, okay, well, this checks out, this checks out, this checks out.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to, you know, actually looking at, okay, what are some of the
that Ridgeback was checking his drink for alcohol, but we're good. He passed the test.
Yeah, thumbs up. We're good. I need to put more in. But yeah, so I really tried to make it to where I didn't have any confirmation bias coming in. But like I said, with looking at all of the similarities possible, yes. Now, whether they were meant to be or not, that's the question. But I would say overall, yes, they are anti-Semitic in nature.
Yeah. I think that your opening salvo was really damning. What was pulled from the book and what is like an anti-Semitic caricature, because they were carbon copies of one another. So it's hard to come back from that. But realistically, we will never know the intent.
Right.
I think at this point, she has learned to keep her mouth shut.
too little, too late. But
Yeah.
at least there's that.
Yeah. And on that note,
On that happy note, we shall see you next time.
thanks for listening in. If you're jonesing for more witchy goodness between episodes, you can check us out on Instagram at Dusty Cauldron Podcast, on Facebook at the Dusty Cauldron Podcast Group, or email us at dustycauldronpodcast@gmail.com. Or check us out at www.dustycauldronpodcast.com. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening right now. And if you want to hear more, I mean, you can look at another platform, I guess. I don't even know how many platforms we're on right now.
Wherever you will find your podcasts.
Yeah. And remember, we're never going to know whether or not there was intent by the creator to have the goblins in Harry Potter be caricatures of the Jewish people. But signs point to yes. And don't forget to stir.
Magic 8-ball. Shake, 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 shake. Signs point to yes.
We'll leave it. Don't forget to stir whatever you've got brewing in your own cauldron right now. Bye.